Now, I know that often attendees of our webinars are pretty happy to chat actually through the meeting chat. So I can see lots of people who are pretty good at chatting and introducing themselves. I'm hoping that today will be no exception, but sometimes it takes a little bit of warming up. So just in terms of kicking off, the agenda for this session, I'm going to introduce myself and formally introduce Cat. We've got some advanced questions in case people were feeling shy. They've been curated from various comments that came through on LinkedIn, so thank you if you sent those in. And then in the meantime, we'll be having an open session. I'll be keeping an eye on your questions in the meeting chat or comments. If it works out, if you want to explain your question in more detail, we will set it up so you can unmute. And then we'll just take top tips from Cat, practical next steps and tools, and a summary and close. And we will absolutely keep an eye on the conversations we go through. In terms of introducing myself, I can see there's people that know me from before. So my name is Lucinda. I am the founder of Actus, and this is the sort of, it's under our Actus brand that we're running this session. But I also host the HR Uprising podcast, which is how I met Cat. And so through her work there, and we've looked at working more closely in terms of her work with Powered by Diversity that she'll explain. So you can find out more about me if you're not familiar with Actus, because there are a few names of people here who are less familiar. Well, Actus is a performance, learning and talent management suite. So it's HR software which helps with performance management, doing lots of things, a host of things. But what's relevant for ED&I is potentially our 360 feedback tool. So at the end, we'll mention something that if that's something you're looking at, because Cat also has a tool, we can explain how we can support you in your benchmarking in terms of taking your business forwards in terms of ED&I. So now over to Cat. Cat, can I hand to you and let you explain a little bit about what you do in your background?
Yes, I'm glad you chose this photo. This is not me on a daily basis. This was a photo that my husband took when we were just about to go live with our platform. So I'm a scientist and technologist, and I was a director of technology at the time that the Gender Pay Gap Reporting Initiative came out in 2017. And because I was a woman in tech, and I used to bang on about EDI all the time, the board looked in my direction. They were like, what are we going to do about this gender pay gap? And so 3 years of research later, I had just got funding when lockdown was announced. And then this is me just about to launch September 2020, finishing off the last bits and pieces on my laptop whilst homeschooling my 3 kids. That is my little son there, who is now 8 years old. I think he was about 4 then, brushing my hair with a stickle brick. Obviously, that was helpful. And my 2 other ones are doing their favorite pastime, which is arguing. So it was all very chaotic, but just to bring in the human element of a lot of research, but a lot of family time as well. And we launched in lockdown. So yes, today I'm an expert in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Fairness and opportunity for all is what drives us. And yes, there's my 3 little rugrats.
And I can see you've got, I like the diversity image on the wall with the different paint colours. And I think well-being would have a bit of an issue with your posture at that laptop. I think a better desk. I hope you've invested in a better desk setup since then.
The size of that chair and table are absolutely terrible. I do have a proper desk and a proper chair now, yes.
I'm really pleased to hear it. So I know you'll mention later what you do, but just in terms of your offering, and we'll send out to people who are watching this, we'll send you links out to all the useful information and other things if you want to know more. Do you want to touch on anything on here, Kat?
Yes, I don't want to go on and on at all. So we at Powered by Diversity, we specialise in affordable EDI. We specialise in SMEs, third sector charities. So everything that we create is tailored for small, medium organisations. The way that we do our affordable EDI is through our health check, which is data showing you your gaps. Diversity Ambassador certification, which is training. So if you feel, I don't feel like an expert in EDI, that's the one for you. And Cultural Calendar Club, which is 12 months of live events in line with the cultural calendar.
So you can help people solve problems with ED&I, which is useful. And a lot of us are looking for. And I don't know, well, I think we might be, but we'll ask in the questions. Just get people kicked off in the questions. So we're going to get into the main meat of this. Don't worry, everybody. We're going to go into a question and answer session. I have a just off the wall question that I've just plucked out of the air for you in a moment, Kat. I'm sure you'll be able to handle it. But while we're doing that, what I would like you, if you don't mind, to get you warmed up, people, in the chat, let us know what brings you here, why are you interested in this topic, and actually what kind of have you got an EDI role, or are you an HR generalist? What kind of business do you work for? Is it an SME or a large business? Just to give a bit of context that we can read through as we go through the initial questions, because that's going to help Cat adapt her answers to your requirements. So don't be shy. I know many of you are well familiar with chatting in the chat, and I've got to get started at some point. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, what brings you here, just so that Cat can tailor accordingly. And of course, if you do have any specific questions you want to chuck in the chat, please do feel free to do so. And I know there's some people who should be happy enough to do that. Come on, Claire, Lou, people I know names there that would be happy to explain. Now, while I just do that, I have just got a random one for you, Cat, which is ED&I. We literally had this chat before we came on air. What does the E stand for? Is it equality or is it equity? And where's this kind of confusion come from?
Yes, well, it started off as equality back in the day. I would say it used to be equality, and then it very rapidly turned to equity. So the way that we always explain it is that equality is the outcome. So equality is what we want to achieve, where everyone has equality. Equity, the way we define it is equality of opportunity, equality of safety, professional opportunities, and human rights, basically, that everyone is equal in that regard, not that everyone is the same thing. So what sometimes people misinterpreted equality back in the day, and they were like, well, we did this for this group, we need to do this for this group, that's equality, so stick it, that's what you wanted the whole time, isn't it? So it changed to equity. So what that means is everyone's seen the diagram of the people trying to look over the fence. There's a tall person, a medium person, and a small person. The tall person could already see over the fence. If you give them equality, they all get one box to stand on. The first two can see over the fence, the third one still can't. Equity, fairness is actually raising everyone up so they all have equal opportunity, equal access. So yes, equity is the
all three see over the fence. Yeah, that is a really good bit. That's a good way of explaining it, isn't it? Yeah, so equity actually achieves, so you're redressing the balance in line with people's issues, that they all have the same opportunity to see over the fence.
Exactly, yes, it's all about leveling the playing field.
Great, okay. So again, just getting people warmed up to be a little bit interactive. We've just got a poll. I'm going to ask Laura, my colleague, just to put this first poll up, just to get a sense as to who out there, well, Cat and I have a chance just to read through the meeting chat, whether or not you've got a D&I strategy in place at the moment, just to get a sense of it. It's an anonymous poll, so hopefully Laura's going to launch that for me. I don't think I can see it, so Laura, you might have to tell me what's going on with it. And in the meantime, we'll just have a quick read through and see who's on the call. Thank you, everybody, for using the chat here. So you've got other data analytics. So we've got people with data, so people are starting out with it. Someone's in a talent management role who's having to pick it up. That's quite a common thing. So you actually pick it up, and then how do you have the confidence to know what to do with that? Where do you start? Yeah, few of us generalists. So again, it kind of sits as in terms of your remit. Where do you start with something like that? Actually, on those you just pretend, if getting a sense of sort of size of business, are you SME, mid-size, public sector? What, just useful to have a sense there. Great. Okay, we've got a real diversity. We've got quite a good mix here, which is great. So we'll keep it quite broad and general. But as I say, any specifics, do you feel free to pop those in? We've had some pleasing Zoom challenges for the call. I'm hoping everyone managed to get on, which involves me being able to add polls and not being able to see them for some reason. How are we doing the poll, Laura? Are you able to share it? Well, can I, because I can't see it at the moment.
No, I can't, but I can read through it if you like.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have nothing yet. We have 2 out of 17, so 12%. A few initiatives, but no master plan, 9 out of 17, and that's 53%. We have benchmarked and some areas to improve. That's just 1 out of 17 at 6%. A rough plan at 2 out of 17 at 12%. And yes, a full strategy. That's 3 out of 17 at 18%. So in the lead is a few initiatives, but no master plan.
So this is a good opportunity to work out what we can actually do going forwards in terms of those things, and this is hopefully therefore going to be useful to people. So in terms of popping up the questions that we had in advance, and hopefully that, based on what you said there, this first question is going to be particularly relevant. We thought we'd put all of the questions up that we're going to use that are our pre-planned questions that we'll take through with Cat, and obviously I'll ask follow-up questions. But if you've therefore got questions that you want to ask as we go through this, or specific follow-up questions, I will keep an eye on the chat here, so please do feel free to ask. So these are our pre-planned questions, and we'll take and we'll go on from there. So Cat, starting points, where would you start? We know that what most people have said is that they're not quite sure where. Lots of people have taken this on as a sort of partial role. Any help would be appreciated. Right, Cat, help people, please.
Yes, absolutely. Do you know what? That's exactly why this is exactly where I started out. So when they threw the ball at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, because when you start to think about EDI, there's so many different topics in EDI. There's so many different potential outcomes that you could have, but there's also so many different things to learn, so many different protected groups. And who do you focus on? Do you focus on an intersection or what? It's my field, so I'm empathizing hard with you, which is the reason why I decided to go on my research mission and turn it into a business. So what we always advise people when they're starting to build an EDI strategy is, number one, get your team together. So don't try and do it by yourself. So one person cannot do EDI alone. And this is the very first, the most fundamental step is get those executive sponsors on board. So the most senior leadership team at your organization, they've got to be bought in. Not every single one of them necessarily, as long as you have one or two really passionate sponsors who care, and they're going to be able to make decisions, and they're going to be able to move roadblocks out of the way for you, and they're going to be able to get you on the agenda in the boardroom and help you to be a priority, and also allocate budget to you as well. So it's really important that you get those on board. Get the volunteers from within the organization to come forward and help you as well. They're going to be your change makers. That's what we call them. And so they're the people on the ground who are really passionate. They don't need to be experts. So oftentimes people will shy away from getting involved in EDI because they're like, oh, I don't know every single thing about every single thing. It doesn't matter about that. All they need is the passion for the cause and the want to learn, and they're open to learning and going on their own journey. And then you need to look at your whys for EDI. So one of the most fundamental things that organizations miss out, that we find when they come to us and they've done something and they're like, it didn't go that well. Either they've tried to start off by gathering their demographic information. So they're like, you need a place to start. Lots of people think baselining data of some regard, of some kind, and they're like, well, the data that comes to mind is demographic, so I want to build a pie chart of all the different ethnicities we've got, all the different genders, etc., sometimes at different levels of the organization, which is a valuable exercise to do because it can show you, starkly, you probably know by looking around at leadership level, you've not got enough diversity there, you've not got enough diversity at manager level, and so on. However, that seems like the first most obvious step. We talk about this in the podcast. It's probably the worst thing to do to start off, purely because you are starting off and you'll launch it with a headline of diversity is very important to us. And then you're going big on the diversity. We are really focused on diversity this year. It's super important for us as a business, etc. And you're launching this whole initiative to a company which the majority of which probably isn't ticking very many diversity boxes. Let's be honest, they're probably not going to be. And even if people are ticking one, for example, I'm a white woman, I would take female, I would take parent, I would be like, am I as diverse as I could be? Potentially not. You're going to be launching something which is, this is very important to our company, to your employee base, without bringing in any context. Like, how do you feel at this organization? Are we serving you? What do you want to see do better? How are your professional opportunities? Do you feel included? Any of those things that feel like they're for me, and you're getting them to tick boxes. And if they're not ticking very many boxes, they are going to potentially leave feeling, I haven't been listened to, you don't know anything about how I feel at this organization. All you're taking is one very small aspect of who I am, like my womanness and my parentness are just part of who I am, and they're not really what I bring to this organization. My skills, my dedication, my whatever those things are. You're taking it out of context and you're making them feel less than potentially. You've got the group who are not out, So from gender identity to orientation to even parent status, single parent status, socioeconomic status, depending on what demographics you're giving, they might not want to be out. They might worry if they do divulge, they might worry about being wheeled out to be, you know, the spokesperson for that group, which we hear a lot. And they're very unlikely to come out for the first time on something like that. So if you want to draw those people out, they will be mired in suspicion unless you have the key thing, which is a big glittering why. The third group are the most dangerous that you can create by doing this, and that is what we see a lot of men of a certain age, of a certain ethnicity, which is not minoritized, being very vociferous and powerful detractors to EDI. This is woke nonsense. EDI is a load of nonsense. What a joke. This is a distraction from what we're trying to do as an organization, etc. The vast majority of those commentators, when you look online who was making those comments, it is a white male face of a certain age, because EDI is terrifying for that group unless you launch it as it can be beneficial to you too. So where you're just gathering demographic information and they're not feeling like they're ticking off boxes, and you've launched under this heading of diversity is very important, and they're like, but I'm not diverse. Am I not important? Fear is the underlying thing, and then they will sort of try to derail it as much as they possibly can. So we wouldn't start there. So start with your big glittering why. So why is diversity important to us? Is it to be more competitive? Is it to you know, get more of a market share? Is it to increase our bottom line? Do we think it'll make us more profitable? Do we want to capture a new segment of our market? You know, we've done some customer analysis and we want to bring diversity because we realize we've got this great big segment and it's not represented within our organization. So we want to bring in the representation to be able to talk to that group. And then once you've got your group, your team assembled, you've got your executive sponsor, you've got your big glittering why, then it's about baselining. So where are we at now in terms of being able to achieve that? So if you want to bring in more diversity to the business, what diverse perspectives do you want to bring in and to what departments? So it's not necessarily just hiring a load of ethnically marginalized talent if you are not prepared to use their ideas, their perspectives, their amazing disruption that they could potentially bring into the building, which is why you want to hire them in the first place. You want to bring in different perspectives to try and mix things up and be like, can I just challenge that idea? Or I've had a look at what we're putting out there. I don't think that's going to go down very well. You know, for me, it made me think this. If you're not prepared for that, you're not ready. So thinking about where you want to hire in that exactly, and then thinking about goals and then outcomes. So how are you going to measure that what you are doing along the way is having an impact? And that is really important because it will keep people engaged. It will keep your exec team on board if they can start to see data and progress towards it. And that is all about breaking your goals down to measurable things. So if you want to hire more diversity, you might want to start on which specific type of diversity. Let's say you want more females in your advertising team. For example, you might want to start with, right, who is in the pipeline? How many female applicants did we get compared to last time? Are we progressing towards our goal? And of those female applicants, how many made it through to interview stage? Is that an increase from last time? And then of those, how many got offered the job, etc., and why? And so really having a look at that tracking towards your outcomes and being able to show progress along the way. That was a very long answer, but I get very excited by
I've got some. So big glittering why, love the extent. I love the example of that. We've got some questions coming up here already, and I'm going to come up with just big glittering why. But I'll summarise. So Lou's asked a question which we'll come back to in a minute. Just question to people there. One of the things that Cat was talking about was sponsorship, the importance of having a sponsor. If you just use like the thumbs up if you've got a sponsor, or a thumbs down if you haven't, or what, I've used some sort of emoji in the meeting chat as to whether you've got one, seeing as I'm unable to make the polls work at the moment. I'm interested as to how easy that is for people, and if there is a problem there, maybe Cat's got suggestions on it. So just before we go to Lou's question, so Cat, so you said you had a big glittering why. What interested me about that was you were talking about it quite often being a business one, which is useful, I think, especially those of us in HR, creating a business case. So actually saying we need to be more competitive in this marketplace, so we need to have more representative views. I think that's a really interesting angle, as opposed to it's the right thing to do or it's a nice thing to do, because that is more likely to open purse strings, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, there is definitely there's obviously merit to it being the right thing to do. That is the fundamental. I mean, it is the right thing to do. It goes without saying.
Yes.
However, when you're talking about engaging the business, the leaders, getting every employee excited about it, if you think about organizations that are really smashing it in terms of EDI, like Nike always springs to mind. Their big glittering why would be, we want to create a movement. We are not just sportswear. We are motivating. We are like a life motivator. We want to inspire children that they can achieve, all kinds of children that they can achieve amazing things. So that will impact the different types of athletes that they sponsor. It will impact the types of products that they put out there, the models they use, how they use their advertising. It's about being more than just what we do as an organization. We're billowing out into creating a movement. So there's loads of different
That's
brands
kind of
that do
purpose, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's all about purpose, and it's about tying that, and that is all about organizational pride as well. It really goes to lever that organizational pride metric that we take in our assessment. That
So,
there's a tight
sorry,
there's dating apps, there's all sorts of organizations who've got a big glittering why, and it's about being more than just a dating app, more than a cleaning product, more than, you know, a pair of ties. It's actually, this is a movement for body positivity or for eco brands, etc.
So it's really aligning it again with the business strategy. So then going on to the questions in the chat before we go on to our second question on here, then we've got the sponsor. I'll just go over to Nick's before Lou's. So if you've only got sponsorship in HR, but you've also got kind of other potential sponsors, is saying that they might fit in terms of your powerful detractor group that you've mentioned. Are you able to comment on how you might deal with a detractor or any tips on that, or bringing those sort of people on board?
Yeah, sponsor from HR. Other potential sponsors would also form part of the powerful detractor group mentioned. So are they just fitting that demographic group, or are they powerful detractors, is what I would ask you. I would recommend in that instance, you need someone who is not you to help facilitate that conversation, because you will probably be the person who talks about EDI all the time. And people get a little bit that it starts to go in one ear and out the other when it's just you banging the drum all the time. It's really hard, and it's soul destroying for you, especially when you can see what needs to be done and you're in that position. So I really feel for you there. I would recommend getting them, having a conversation from with that HR executive person. Just be like, look, are we going to make headway here? Are we serious about, are the exec team of this organization seriously not going to focus on EDI? For me, and I'm not advocating that would be a massive red flag for me working at that organization. You know, it's that if you, not that I'm saying that you should leave, but if you feel that, and if other people, your employees will feel that as well, it's super dangerous in this world that we are in at the moment, where society, the news, social media, people's conversations, they're about EDI, they're about fairness, they're about opportunities. And I would just worry that that organization is going to get left behind. So I would just have a really serious conversation with your HR sponsor and just go, can we actually get the exec team on board, because they need to. And that will probably look like a business case, honestly. But they're very simple to do. You know, if it's about being more competitive in your marketplace, it's about looking at who your competitors are, what they're doing. If they're doing stuff in EDI, wonderful, that's your case closed. If it's about your customer segment, right, what segment do we have now? How do we want to grow that? It involves this group of people. We've got to represent them in-house. You know, it's that everything in EDI can be brought down to a business case, and that might be the way to do it. But if it is fear-based, then that session where you bring in an external person could help them all to see their own diversity. So even if it's one of these psychometric testing things that you get, I just had one done the other day from a founders group I'm in, but showing how different you are. You know, it might be 3 white female founders who are parents in their 40s like me, but we will probably be different, and helping them look to different in that regard, not necessarily your protected characteristics, will help them see you've been valued even though you're different. Maybe you're an introvert, maybe you are a reflective thinker, maybe you are, you know, an activist, maybe you go out there and you just want to get on with it. It helps you show how difference has formed your executive group and has been really beneficial for the business. It's not necessarily just about protected characteristics. And often that attitude of being a powerful detractor is like, oh, well, white men don't belong here anymore and you don't want us and you want to fire us all. This whole movement is about attacking me and my position and my livelihood. And actually, it's not about that at all. Yes, protected characteristics are one way that you can be different, but actually difference is what is already making your organization great. Protected characteristics.
Mike's agreeing with you here. I think, like I was saying, thinking the same thing as engagement with the average middle-aged white male will be a lot higher if you tick their boxes, which generally that commercial thing, that why, making it a commercial why is sensible, but and also identifying with them as individuals, you know, not just grouping them together just because they are of that demographic in terms of that. So that is really helpful. Just I'm conscious we've got 4 more questions to answer, but also Lou's been waiting for an answer to how would you measure impact? So we're still kind of on this EDI strategy, you've built it. What would your top tips or tip-top tips be to measure impact?
Yes. Do you know what? I was just writing about this last night. So I'm just keep an eye on LinkedIn because I'm going to put something out there about that. Impact, it's all about breaking down your goals. So once you have your goals, so we want to, you know, let's say hire more diversity into the business, hire more gender diversity into the business. I don't like saying diversity because diversity is different. We are all different. Hire more gender diversity into the business, and you want to, you know, increase your female representation at executive leadership level, for example. You would break that down into the steps needed to get there, just like you would with any strategy, making a strategy into a plan. Step back. So that would be having a look at your female representation at manager level, having a look at your job descriptions that you put out there, testing them for gender bias, testing them for gendered language, doing research in terms of showing those job descriptions to females who are of that level and of that ilk to say, is this appealing to you? What would you change, etc. And then having a look at those pipelines. So whatever your goal is, always make sure that, and this is where so many EDI initiatives fall down, is because it's like, we're doing EDI. And like, you would never in any other part of your business go, we're doing advertising. And then just be like, I'm going to put like a nice advert out there and then be like, great, okay, so we put the advert out there. That was cool. And then you just carry on with the rest of your stuff. You'd be like, right, what is the campaign here? And think of it like a campaign, or think of it like you do any other part of your business that you do in a businessy way. So you get the big goal, you break it down to outcomes, and then you break that down into tangibles. And then how are you going to measure those things are actually changing? EDI can just be managed in exactly the same way. So you can have a look at all those stepstones to be able to get there and measure along the way with metrics. And if it's something like inclusion and belonging, there are questions that you can ask. And we have broken down inclusion and belonging. Even if you just ask one question, it's not that helpful. And I do a whole other talk about why not to ask these types of questions, but I feel like I belong here as part of your engagement survey. And if that's all that you have, if that's all the data that you can gather, that, you know, that feeling of belonging, I feel like I belong here, just get the green light, get the percentage of people who say they feel like they belong at the organization to rise quarter on quarter. That is in itself is a really good metric of measuring impact.
That's quite an interesting one because there's 2 different angles there in terms of you go, actually, we want more female representation. Hopefully you've got a sensible why for that. That you obviously go back and work out why you have or haven't, and are there areas in which it's been discriminated and how you get there. You can measure that by having more female representation, but does that actually give you any impact? So your point there is actually what are you really, are you looking for higher engagement, or are you looking for more greater customer buy-in? But I suppose all of these things are going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. To have the impact of the diversity changes does not happen overnight. It's a leading indicator like engagement of hopefully what you're looking to achieve.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's so important to pick a couple of small things and break it right down and then plan it out into now, next, and then long term, because I've also seen really senior exec teams get frustrated at the lack of progress with EDI. But what is actually happening is that the people who are looking at EDI, they're either not measuring or not reporting on those wins as they go along, those marginal gains, because EDI is all about marginal gains. If you suddenly within 12 months have a super duper diverse organization where the pie chart is reflective of the whole of the UK, or suddenly you have no gender pay gap in 12 months. I worked with a company when they had done that. They had tried to do gender pay gap closing initiatives, like, you know, investing in more females, bringing more females to leadership. In the end, they were so scared of reporting their gender pay gap that they just stuffed 8 women onto the board overnight. And so they had a board of 16 people, of which eight of them were female, and it was just an absolute catalogue of errors. So yeah, we see organizations getting frustrated all the time. I feel like that could have been avoided if they had been looking at, here's our long list for interview, and here's who's getting to interview, we're getting there. Here's how the female talent is progressing. We had 80% females on the Emerging Leaders Programme last year, where before we'd only had 25%, for example. Or we've really had a look at our promotions, criteria, and we've had a look at, removing some of the things that we had that we feel like may have been holding women back from applying or from getting through. We've had a look at the bias in the process, and we've decided to do X, Y, and Z. We've brought in diverse panels where we're deciding on who gets the promotions. Reporting on all of those things will make leaders feel like progress is being made without having to go, we're taking matters into our own hands. Let's just promote 8 women into the board overnight. That board
Which
could not
could
make
be
decisions.
counterproductive, because if they're not in the right jobs, then that's going to give everybody, no one's going to buy into those roles, and they're set up for failure, not for success in that situation. So
Exactly.
Looking at our other questions, so we've still got 4 more questions, and people are hopefully eating their lunch in the background, but they might have their own questions. So let's do some quick fire. So if you are an SME, how important is D&I, or DE&I, or EDI?
Yes, it doesn't matter about the initials to me. Everyone uses different initials. We don't argue about those. I would say EDI is even more important if you're an SME, because you're likely in a really competitive market. You likely don't have the resources that the great big organizations have. And you need to be really, really competitive. You need to have innovation. You need to be capturing the markets. And it's all about how big is our market share compared to all those different competitors? So I would say it's even more important for SMEs.
Maybe following on from that, if you are an SME and so, for example, that example you were talking about leadership pipeline and stuff like that is more larger organization, mid organization. So sticking with SMEs and things like that, where would you start in terms of diversity information? And actually, what would you look at in terms of benchmarking there? Would it be things like feeling and belonging?
Yes, absolutely. So forgetting about the demographics, I would look at psychological safety. If I could only measure one metric there, I would look at psychological safety, because in an SME, it's all about innovation. It's all about competitiveness and capturing the new markets, growth, etc. And being really scrappy of like, what can we do here? We need an idea for this. Or it's also quick moving and agile. We need those ideas. You need those people going, can I just, I don't think this is right. I don't think we should go for it. Or this isn't working. We need to try something else. I've got an idea. And all of that, the bedrock for that, or the fertile ground for that, is psychological safety. So I would say that is definitely a build it and it will come type thing of build that psychologically safe environment, and diversity will come out.
How interesting. So you're not saying start with protected characteristics and benchmark your benefit. You're actually, how do people feel that sense of belonging? You're all about that in there. So that's an interesting angle.
Yeah, you could hire the most diverse group in the entire world, and if you have no psychological safety, they will churn out. It is as pointless as buying a Ferrari to keep it locked up in the garage. You're never going to realize the beauty and the value of that diversity that you've hired in if it never gets a chance to see the light of day.
Interesting, thank you. We had the comment just coming here. We've got a 50-50 male-female board with a female lead in our division, 30+ companies, so large organisation, all there on their merits. They ensure that they're highly visible in terms of what they do, but also externally. Positive role models are key to driving ED&I with visible pathways for all. So getting those role models. And I think that also ties back to that sponsorship, about how important it is to be a champion or a sponsor, and whatever it takes to motivate those people who are in those roles, whether it's a commercial motivation, to get them on side, to see it's not just a nice to have, it's a real genuine advantage for the business going forwards in many ways.
Yes, 100%.
What would you say, what are the most common issues or challenges that you come across when you're working with clients? I'm sure this is how long is a piece of string. So what jumps to mind that would be useful to share?
I would say survey fatigue is a big one, that people feel like they have been surveyed to death. And obviously our baseline tool is I don't like calling it a survey, I like calling it an assessment, because it's the employees assessing the organization. But yeah, I would say survey fatigue is a big barrier, because people are reluctant to baseline and build a strategy off really good solid EDI data, because they do a pulse survey every week or a pulse every month, and they have a great big engagement survey that goes around twice a year, and they also have this one and this one,
and it doesn't ask the right questions. So they can't, so they haven't got existing data, or would you start with existing data in that circumstance? Or look for existing data?
I would look for what the existing data has told me, and I would look to consolidate some of that. So I would look to really get into why are you know, what are the benefits of all of these surveys that you're sending around? What are they really working for you? Which ones can we maybe cut or consolidate? And let's think about what data we need to get next. Are those existing data things that we're gathering already, which are fatiguing people, are they actually helping us, or should we just stop and go back to the drawing board and think again? Because people are getting surveyed out, and data is so important for EDI.
And so, okay, that works in terms of that. Going on to the quick wins, which perhaps this might play into our second or our final poll, actually. Laura, can you pop up the final poll for me, please? And while we do this, we'll get some information. So the final poll is asking these questions: what makes managing DE&I difficult for you, if it does? And it's a multiple, you can select more than one if you want. And if there's something that makes it challenging for you, tell us in the chat. That's not on, if it's not on here, or if it's not challenging for you, tell us in the chat. So while people complete that poll, do you want to talk to us a little bit about quick wins, Cat?
Quick wins.
What would be a quick win? If you want to do something about ED&I, you've got little resource. We've kind of touched a bit about the data there, haven't you? So you're saying you'd look at your existing data. So maybe you've identified a gap somewhere. So let's talk about a quick win in terms of something you might do as an intervention.
I would always go off rewarding the employees and thanking them for having contributed data. So whatever data you've gathered so far from your pulse surveys or from your engagement surveys, have a look at that. You know, even if it's like one of those sorts of questions that I'm not a massive fan of, which is non-actionable data, like I feel like I belong here, for example. If that is the only data that you have on EDI, equity, diversity and inclusion data, by the way, not just the D, not just demographic data. So EDI should always be gathered together. If you only have a non-actionable piece of data, like I feel like I belong here, I would do something off the back of that. So what we always try and avoid with our assessment is having to go and get more data off the back of having gathered the data. So what it's a bit of a, I've got a lot of opinions on this particular topic, but gathering EDI data can be a bit of a false economy. So a lot of our competitors who do EDI bolt-ons to their engagement survey, for example, they'll be like, it's only 8 questions, it only takes 3 minutes, just engage with it, it's wonderful, and it's not going to take any of your time because you're all survey fatigued. But what you end up with is, I feel like I belong here, I'm proud to work at this organization, you know, a non-actionable data point number 3, because the only action you can take off something like I feel like I belong here is to gather more data, which is to find out why don't you feel like you belong. If that is the only piece of data you had, I would say go for it and gather that extra piece of data. So a focus group on belonging at the organization, you know, let's get some snacks and drinks and get people together and let's talk about belonging. What does belonging mean to everybody? Is it about the social scene? Is it about having your opinions heard and valued? Is it about having buddies at the office? Is it that sense of camaraderie? Is it our working location? So is it to do with, you know, just general chit chat and missing out on that? What is that for you and how can we improve it? Where is it lacking and where is that gap? So I would say any quick win that you want to do is act on the data that you already have.
And this is not meaning to be contentious, but I'm just going to say, because it came into my head, is how you can unintentionally try and do something inclusive and be exclusive. So if for example, it is now Ramadan, so snacks and drinks don't help us be inclusive with some of our people in those situations, even though what we're trying to do is do something that is helpful. And it leans into where I've seen people say, you know, I'm a parent, I've got going out on the lash on a Friday night. It doesn't work for me in terms of those sort of things. So sometimes our cultures are unintentionally exclusive. So being able to talk to people about how can we include people in other ways is an interesting challenge one. There's no real getting around it without actually asking those questions. But that's interesting because you're saying really, so the engagement survey type questions often throw up more questions than answers, is what you're really saying, because they don't ask enough. You've got to then go and delve further to understand really what's underneath it.
Yeah, that is a really important thing that I'd say is when you're assessing EDI bolt-ons or whether you're going to send this survey out about EDI, just have a look at the questions and think about the data that's going to come off the back of it, and think about you as the person interpreting it. Am I going to be able to act immediately off this data? So if it's a question about, I feel I'm proud to work at this organization, again, that's not particularly helpful. You need to know whether it is about this organization has a wider purpose beyond profit. This organization has a purpose that I personally buy into. It aligns with my values. You need that. Why are you not proud? Why do you not feel like you belong, in order to be able to do something off the back of it? So yes, have a look at those questions with a critical eye.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to put, so we're kind of at 1/4 past, we've booked to go till 1/2 past, but I know from experience people will start to want to drift off. So if there are any questions that you want to address to Cat, please do pop them in the chat now. So we'll be able to do those. While we're waiting for those, Laura has helpfully popped through the responses to the poll. So what we have got here is well, what do you think, if I just put the polls out? Come on, Cat, going to get you. What do you think the biggest one is, that's the biggest challenge, number one? And people were allowed to vote for more than one, but the one that has got 58% response rate.
I would say, I really hope it's not, but I would say it's lack of leadership buy-in.
And you get the first prize. Sorry to say, lack of leadership buy-in. This is all good for you to get writing these blogs on LinkedIn. Follow Cat on LinkedIn. How do you get leadership buy-in? I think your big why, that sort of thing. It's how do you've got to talk their language. It's like change management stuff. Ruth has guessed time. Actually, time isn't the next. The next one is no budget at 42%. Not enough time is 37%. Lack of employee interest is 32%. And the lack of confidence is 21%. So it's not confidence holding people back. In our group of people on this call, it's getting that buy-in. So we need to be able to do more on that.
I'll tell you what I will do for all of those who said lack of leadership buy-in. The first part of our assessment, and I don't do this a lot, the first part of our assessment is a leadership alignment session. And we crafted it specifically to talk to those people who are like, EDI, what a distraction. What even is it? It's not about what we should do. That the people over there are doing that. Is that woke nonsense that people are on about? Actually, when we do our leadership alignment session, it's 70 questions. You get your leadership team in a room and they answer one answer. The whole group of 8 can only answer one answer. So one person is on the mouse, maybe it's me, and they need to agree, is it, for example, at this organization, we work hard to create an inclusive environment and culture. That's the first question. And they need to get together and go, yes. So someone will be like, yes, of course we do. And someone else will be like, I'm not sure. I don't think we do.
Well, that could take a really long time with some leadership teams. I could take literally weeks.
We get through it in an hour. We always get through it in an hour. And I am strict on that, because that's how you get them in the room. You get them in the room by being like, come on, quick. Let's get to the next question. Is it yes? Is it in progress? So we're like, some take longer than others. Like that is one that takes longer. But what it does is it systematically goes through every single area of the running of your organization and says, do you check your job descriptions for gender biased language, for example? Do you have inclusive adverts? Do you work hard to make sure your adverts are inclusive? All those different parts of the running of the organization through the lens of EDI. And that process gets the penny dropping, and they're going, oh, that's what EDI is. It's actually because they have this idea that we need to change the world. And we're a grounds maintenance company. We maintain people's grounds and their trees. How are we meant to change the world? How can we solve gender imbalance? But actually what it is it's everyone just looking at their own sphere of influence through the lens of EDI. And those teams, they leave going, oh my gosh, that's what EDI is. They're like, what a good use of time. What a fruitful exercise. So if you want me to come and do one of those for your organization, I will do it for free. This is how much I care about EDI and engaging them in the topic.
Worth your welcome.
Once they see it, once they see EDI, what it actually means for the organization, they're like, oh my gosh, we could do loads of things here. There's loads of low-hanging, they love saying low-hanging fruit. There's a low-hanging fruit here. I didn't realize that this was what it was. They just got some existential idea of that they have to go and single-handedly change the world. When actually it's like, no, just look at all of your stuff and make sure you're being inclusive with all of it. And they get so motivated off the back of it. So if you want that, I will do it for free. I'll do it over Teams for free, 1 hour, and then challenge me. See if it engages them.
So if you want to take about, we will send you out the notes and the links after this call. Everybody will get the link to the video and all the resources and things like that. So if you want, we'll put Cat's contacts into it, or if you want to just respond to that email, and we'll put you directly in touch with Cat from that. And I know she is genuine about that. It's not there's a genuine thing because you're very passionate about it. Just an observation that I'm wondering, it's just almost a bit of a pennies dropping for me here on this. I wonder if some of the resistance to ED&Is, people think it's all about gender or race. It's all about diversity as opposed to inclusion and equity or equality, whichever, which actually most people don't really argue with that much. It's not that offensive. It's not going against the stereotypical, I try and avoid going against that, but the stereotypical white middle-aged man that they're almost feeling themselves like they're oppressed thing. It's not about that. It's actually about just being fair and inclusive and being a decent human being in many ways. Someone's already come up on there, Lou, who I know directly, so I'll definitely put you in touch there. Right, guys, are there any other questions directly for Cat? I'll keep an eye on the chat while we just go through our wrap-up slides. But if not, then I think probably there's loads of food for thought. We'll also send you the link to the podcast episode, which is 5 or 6 weeks ago, that Cat did with me, which is really comprehensive. I did the podcast episode with her, and I was sufficiently inspired that I wanted to do the survey. That she has a great survey with our team. So I've done it in our own business, which is very rare that I do that off the back of having a podcast guest on. So we invested in terms of doing it. So even as a small micro business, I think what she does, she's absolutely passionate about it. It's absolutely data driven and is a great benchmark tool. So just while we keep an eye out for any last minute questions or observations that are coming through in the meeting chat, do pop them in. I guess practical tips, we've got 3 high level practical tips there. I don't know if you want to add to any closing practical tips, Cat, there before we go into our sort of wrap up slides.
Yeah, I would say benchmarking your current position using whatever data sources you have already. Just get there. And if you don't need our tool, like, yeah, I would love you to have our tool because it's really comprehensive, but you can use the data you have already and go from there. Exit interviews, promotion stats, that kind of relies on you getting your data into your HR system, into the system which holds those exit the promotion stats data, which is a little bit tricky. But if you have that data, yes, definitely analyze it. And focus groups, yeah, getting a chat in there. I would just say be careful with focus groups. Sorry, plugging my laptop into a different charger. Be careful with your focus groups, because what you don't want to do is get those ERGs, the employee resource groups, really excited and be like, yay, it's an ERG. Okay, let us know what you want to do, because they'll come to you with a list of stuff, and it will be a fairly long list, and every ERG you create will all come to you with a list of stuff, and then you're like, oh no, I didn't tell them we didn't have any budget for this, or we've got very limited things. I would say your focus groups, think of a business problem that you have. Think of, like, how do we get more women to leadership level, if that's your goal? How do we hire for a more diverse candidate group? Of, how do we bring more diverse talent into this business? Run the focus groups on something you want to achieve, because actually they will come up with a lot better ideas, having been through the process themselves more recently probably than you. So I'd say give them lots of really practical things to get their teeth into.
Brilliant, thank you. Lots of value there. So we'll send this all out to you. As I said, the Powered by Diversity. You mentioned some of the survey tool you've got. You've also got the thing which is the calendar thing, which I think is worth taking a look at. It was quite interesting. Children, explain that, Kat. I just thought it's quite fun.
Yes. Yes, I'll happily do that. So we've got the tool that we've talked about. We've got if you are in charge of EDI and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I've never had any training in EDI, I don't have all the protected characteristics, I'm not an expert. If you're feeling like doing that, that's why we created that. So many people came to us off the back of the data and said, oh, I'm not an expert in EDI, what do I do? We created that training program to make you feel sustainably confident in EDI. So that's that, and it's not expensive. And then the Cultural Calendar Club, I mean, what a beauty that is. So many of our customers, it came because so many of our customers were like, gosh, I can't keep up with the cultural calendar. It's like menopause day, then it's mental health week, and then it's pride, and then it's this, and I don't have any budget. I don't have enough budget. Or I'm wheeling people from our organization out into front of everybody to be like, talk about a really, personal and potentially traumatic topic in front of 50 to 100 of your closest colleagues who you're then going to have to go meet with. It's like, oh no. So we just put on the cultural calendar of events. We've got loads and loads of people, boots on the ground people, speakers and storytellers and experts, and the cultural calendar is there, and we just let our organizations plug into it, and they're like, oh my gosh, this has taken such a massive time-consuming and stressful task off people's plates. It's stressful organizing events, because not only do you have to source the speaker and then really, really hope that they're good, then you have to like whipping everyone to get into the rooms, be like, we paid for the speaker, please come to this event, why have you not signed up? And then you spend the whole time going, oh my gosh, are people interested, are they engaged, do they like it, was that good, or I don't know. Where you can just relax and plug into it, and then it just happens and your employees can go to it, which is just, it just came to me last December. I was like, why don't we just do that? And then it turned out that it was really helpful. We're very customer led in everything we do. So everything that we launch has come from a lot of people saying to me, this is just so painful. And then we create solutions with our amazing collective to solve your problems.
I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. So do take a look at that, guys. I think it's inspired. You all know us in terms of this, but the thing I mentioned in terms of our aligned offering, obviously in terms of benchmarking, if you want to use something like 360 feedback, that gives you a sense of a cultural, individual leadership. So some of the questionnaires that we've got include diversity. So we have one which talks about psychological safety. So if you were thinking of your board and you wanted to identify, make them a little bit more self-aware as to how inclusive they were, then obviously 360 feedback works at an individual level. So you could do something specific there too. So just flagging our Actus 360 Now offering. And if you want to experience 360, if you've been thinking about it, we're doing an offer at the moment where you can have a one-off whichever template you want, and you'll get one-to-one feedback. I will do it with you in terms of working that out. We're charging for it, so I mean, Cat's is really free. Is a really good offer in terms of her thing. So that's at a 175 price if you want to have the coaching session as well. All of this is coming out to you now, so we're just wrapping up. Lots of links, useful resources. We've done HR Uprising podcast there, the link to Cat's one, which is really great as well. A couple of others. I love the disability opportunity with Hardeep Ray. This is a guy I met who runs diversity. If you wanted to hire more diverse talent, he gives opportunities for people with disabilities and things like that into organisations, and has a sort of a route in there. So I found him really inspiring as well. So all of those things are coming up. As ever, we will let you know when our next webinars and things are coming up. Hopefully, we'd love any feedback from you. Hope we got the Q&A right and you got value out of it. And if so, we'll look to do other options. Follow up with, we'll give you links to Cat's contact details and put you in contact with her as well, so that you can follow her directly. I'd highly recommend connecting with her on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for joining us today. Cat, any final comments you want to say before we close and wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for being so forthcoming and for sharing your situations. I hope you've enjoyed it. I get very excited about all these topics, and I tend to talk very fast because I get really into it. Yeah, I'm definitely serious about my offer. Any help or advice that you ever need, my door is always open. So if anyone has any questions about pronouns and email signatures, how do I do this? How should I position this for my leadership team? Whatever you have questions on, I am here for it. I just really enjoy doing this work.
Definitely, the passion shines through. Wonderful. Thank you everybody for joining us today on this rainy day, and have a great rest of the week. And Cat, thank you so much for joining.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.